Hello and welcome back to this sordid mess. Now if I know the Doctor Who fan base, and oh boy, you guys seem to like it when people on your screen list out some of their favourite Doctor Who adventures, and I thought if I convinced multiple people to do that with me in several videos, despite all these signs screaming at me not to, then that would somehow be better. Oh, and the Oscars are bad. This time, we're covering the first Doctor. I had to keep putting this video off, not only in the vain hope that I would finish my Hartnell reviews before this came out, not just because nearly every story of his is my favourite by this point, but because it's just a daunting task. There's a lot to be said for this era. Take it away, Stephen.
On October 9th, 1928, William Hartnell performed Miss Elizabeth's Prisoner here at the Royal Theatre in North Bay, Ontario, as part of a tour across Canada. It was on this tour that he fell in love with his soon-to-be wife, Heather McIntyre, a fellow actor in the troupe. This period of his life has long been forgotten, only really coming to light in Jessica Carney's biography of her own grandfather. It was, of course, Hartnell's role in Doctor Who, which really propelled him to worldwide fame. A lot has changed in the 95 years since that performance. In fact, this is no longer a theater, having been completely remodeled and transformed into a mix of residential and commercial property in the 1980s. You may wonder then about the significance of this location. Well, much like this theater, my nomination for most underrated story has been lost to time, and as such, has been completely overlooked. The Savages is the 8th serial in Doctor Who's 3rd season, and was written by veteran pulp writer Ian Stewart Black, who would contribute 2 more times to the show, writing the following story, The War Machines, and the Season 4 story, The Macra Terror. Black, it could be argued, while working in one of the most turbulent periods of the show, wrote some of the most forward-thinking and progressive stories of the time. In many ways, The Savages is the archetypical Doctor Who story, parodied and recreated ad nauseum. The Doctor and co have landed on a rock quarry, and are presented with an idealistic society that turns out to be rotten to the core, exploiting a minority population. The Doctor then opposes the regime on moral grounds and tears down the system, replacing it with one in his own image. Damningly generic, if it weren't for the fact that this story was really the first to do this. Of course, it could be argued that stories like the Daleks or the Sensorites try a similar thing, but I think there's a clear distinction. While the Doctor seemingly completely destroys the titular villains in the Daleks, they're very much presented as a completely unredeemable force. Likewise, in the Sensorites, while the Doctor is successful in stopping one corrupt individual, the caste-like institutions of the Sensphere stay in place. In the Savages, the rulers and the oppressed are fundamentally equal, both physically and mentally, when given the same opportunities. They are the same people, separated by an institutional system of what is clear in the original title of, quote, The White Savages, a race-based oppression. It is probably the most blatantly political story in the 1960s. The irony, of course, in trying to tell this story with actors in blackface was clearly lost on those involved. Interestingly, none of the actors who have their skin darkened try to be any particular race. There are no stereotypes or accents used to denote where these people are from. In fact, it's even hard to tell if they're meant to be humans from Earth, or if they're just falling into that old sci-fi trope of aliens being indistinguishable from actual humans, save for cultural differences. In this respect, it works to make the allegory more applicable to the audience. It could be a reference to India, or Africa, or any other pink-colored spot on the map. It is also the first non-Dalek story to have the Doctor's reputation precede him. The Elders have been watching him the whole time. The Elders, when introducing themselves to the Doctor, believe that he will approve of their achievements, built on the backs of the oppressed. Black, however, solidifies the Doctor's position as the defender of the weak, something that the earlier characterization, and Hartnell's own personal beliefs, at the time contradict. It is as if the Doctor himself is holding up a mirror to the British audience through the screen and telling them that they, for once, are the ones that are in the wrong.
Oh, that's bleak. Speaking of bleak, this next award is called Hey, Where Did All These Dead Bodies Come From? When making lists of my favourite stories, I always try to ensure that I've got at least one that breaks my heart. And boy, does the first Doctor have a lot of tragedies under his belt. John Wiles, he sure loved killing people, just loved killing some folks. Mission to the Unknown, Mythmakers, Dalek's Master Plan, and The Massacre. This is a really well-made run of the show that overcomes its production issues. But which one of these slaughterfests did it best? Having recently rewatched it, I'm picking the Mythmakers. Putting the Doctor alongside morally dubious tricksters from Greek mythology, whose stories we tell to our children, is really clever. The fact that he's put next to Odysseus is almost foreshadowing for what the Doctor is going to end up lamenting once this arc is over for him. And hey, it doesn't give away the twist in the title, and it's only 4 parts long, so there we go.
Hey, I'm Lucylicious. The first award goes to the most atmospheric story, The Edge of Destruction. The story is like a reverse Midnight, where instead of paranoid people turning on the Doctor, a paranoid Doctor turns on his companions. The first episode's dreamlike vibes are only rivaled by Once Upon Time. Susan is at her terrifying best, and it's objectively the greatest classic Doctor Who story ever told. It's crammed full of atmosphere and tension, with an excellent cliffhanger. The next award is for the most alien world, and it goes to the Censorites. For a show almost always about aliens, there are hardly any planets that feel truly alien. But the Hartnell era has an absolutely unrivaled number of them. 2. The Censorites features a well-developed society based on telepathy who are clearly autistic. It wins because it feels like a genuine alien society. The runner-up is the Web Planet, which looks and feels alien with its wonderfully weird bug people. Next. The best historical award goes to the Gunfighters. Most historicals from this era are all like, ooh, I'm so serious. Look how educational I seem, but I'm actually not. But the Gunfighters takes history and teaches us nothing. Nothing but how to have fun. Plus, it's the closest Doctor Who ever got to a musical episode. The Sexy Award goes to the creatures of Mech Anus. Episode 5 of The Chase introduces us to easily fended off, horny, gurgling, lumbering crunch plants who only want to hump in the dark. Shout out to the Dalek, who declares themselves totally immobilized before a mechanoid is able to actually clamp it with its feeble arms. Such a sub. The Best Design Award goes to... there's so much amazing design in this era that it kills me to do this. But the award goes to the animated episodes of The Reign of Terror. They feel so twitchingly alive and organic, especially for animation. It's fucking electric. And the Best Character Award goes to... the runners-up are the businessman in Planet of Giants who plays it cool but is clearly internally panicking so much. And also the monoid in The Ark, whose species very recently acquired the power of speech, who accidentally makes his secret evil intentions overly obvious as he revels in his lies. And when caught out, he sucks at lying about it because speaking is so new to him. It's adorable. Now, the Best Character Award goes to the Keys of Marinus, inept criminal dude. I could literally announce that I did his crime, and in front of everyone he would blurt out, "But you couldn't have, because I mean, of course you would say that, because you did it." Yeah. Finally, the greatest cliffhanger award. It goes to the plug that gets taken out, and now the water is going down the drain. No! It's from Planet of Giants. It's amazing. Alright, honorable mentions go to that time when the name of the next episode is announced, and it's called Guests of Madame Guillotine. It's so dark and weirdly silly. It's also brilliant in The Chase, episode 4, when the next episode is called The Death of Doctor Who. They called him Doctor Who. Okay, thanks, bye.
I have a minor confession. For a while, I've not been in love with the expanded media surrounding one. There's nothing much wrong with it, but I was starting to wonder if maybe this era was just untouchable. But then I met a man, a magical, wonderful man, called Simon Gurrier. Simon Gurrier knows 60s Doctor Who. This is far from a new observation, but he knows how the characters feel, he knows how an adventure with them usually goes, but he never lets that authenticity be a limitation on the kinds of stories he can tell. Like I feel so many audios do. Ever since I finished my Time Travelers review, I've taken in as many of the companion chronicles he's penned as I could. I'm about halfway through the Oliver Harper trilogy, and I've just finished the Sarah Kingdom trilogy. Holy shit. I like Dalek's Master Plan, and I like Sarah, but I feel people were overhyping her just a bit. Calling her screen time an arc is definitely a stretch. Home Truths, The Drowned World, and Guardian of the Solar System really do the work. This is closure for one of the most tragic of the Doctor's companions. She's a companion that desperately wants to do the right thing. She wants to solve the puzzle, put things to rights. She keeps being forced to make sacrifices. Is it because it's in aid of this, or does she just want things to end? It really puts a different spin on her death for certainty. It uses ghost stories and fairy tales and the most bizarre, beautiful metaphors, which the story will outright address, but you don't care. Home Truths is my favourite of these, but I fell in love with this whole trilogy. The sound design in all three is excellent, and I could listen to Gene Marsh for years. And again, the Time Travelers for doing very similar things with its companions and just offering really neat additions to this wonderful era.
Ah! What? Where am I?
You're in my world now. Yep, time for you to make me some content.
Fine, I'll do it later.
Yeah, I meant now. You never actually make the stuff you say you will.
Hi everyone, it's Willow of this non-existent YouTube channel's non-existent fame, and I'm here to present the award for the best evolution of a concept and or idea, in my opinion, this being the Daleks. The runner-up being William Hartnell's characterization of the Doctor. Yes, I did make this up just to talk about Daleks. In 1963 and 4, Terry Nation brought us the original Dalek story. Hot off the tail of World War II, at a time where the rubble of the Brits still covered the streets of London, it was still a topical Nazi parallel that hit home for viewers at the time, whilst also cementing the show as the one that sent children behind the sofa.
But at the time, most houses in Britain were small, and sofas had to be positioned against a wall, so were impossible to hide behind, which is how the BBC knew these children were lying. They were taken to the Blue Peter Garden and exterminated.
So, when it came for the second Dalek story, in order to switch it up and keep the Daleks fresh, Nation elected to make the exact same story again, but on Earth. Wait, Ben, before you redact this award, I want to provide my interpretation of the story. The Daleks are presented here as colonists, and they're shown to have an extremely effective formula prepared of taking over planets, using an asteroid bombardment and plague to weaken the planet, then effectively swoop in and gather/kill the survivors. Despite it probably being the weakest 60s Dalek story, extra points go for it for the nonsense science of them wanting to pilot the Earth as a mobile battle station throughout the galaxy. I know Ben is already talking about the chase and how amazing it is, but here we have the show evolving in only its second season, taking the two biggest concepts of the show, time travel and Daleks, and putting them together to create something truly special. It does have the uncanny ability of being both the funniest Dalek story probably ever, but also being that one where a woman threw her baby into the sea. We have Daleks who can't do maths.
Compute time lag by Earth scale.
And also Daleks so traumatized by the Doctor fucking with it that it got sent to intensive care. Everything in this story is just filled with the creativity that could only be found in this very specific era of the show. The chase also boasts my favourite Dalek species rivalry in the Mechanoids, and then there's him.
I am Count Dracula.
So, we've reached 1966. We're just a bit too far off the Nazis now, and what's happening in the world? The very real fear of a nuclear holocaust. Yeah, you could probably get 3 months of children's TV out of that. The fact that Australia blocked Dalek's master plan from broadcast based on the fact that it was too grim for Saturday tea time viewing doesn't surprise me at all, as this is a cold, nasty, and downright bleak story, with the Daleks creating what is essentially the time nuclear bomb. It works wonders to advance them as an idea. Then Power of the Daleks comes along and sweeps all of these under the rug, but we won't talk about that. I also love Mission to the Unknown. So, yeah, that's my mini look back on the Hartnell Dalek stories. I could have gone on for days, but I'm trying to keep this brief, and Ben is holding a gun to my head.
And for my final award, I'm going to do a category I went with last time, newcomer friendly. Which story do you show to a newcomer to get them into the Hartnell era? I'm choosing only one story for this, The Rescue and the Romans. The Rescue's new series length introduces a whole new companion effortlessly, and it has the Doctor at his most Father Christmas. This is the point at which I realised Hartnell was an all-time favourite of mine, and probably always will be. Every interaction Hartnell has with Vicky is endearing, adorable, and makes me feel fuzzy inside. And what can I say about the Romans that I've not said already? The pacing is top-notch. It might have Hartnell's best performance, and I still think it's Zim's favourite classic Doctor Who story. If only because I've yet to convince her to watch any more. Now I know you're thinking, Ben, you gorgeous fool. How could you talk about the best way to introduce someone to Hartnell and not talk about an unearthly child? Well...
So Ben, what I want you to do is zoom on this and every chance you get, even if I'm like just mid-sentence, I want you to show off my unearthly child statue at every single opportunity. Thank you. So Doctor Who is one of the UK's chief cultural exports, but it's also one of the most underrated television shows in history. As the UK's most underestimated man, I think it's only right that I decide this category. What's the most underrated Hartnell story? Well, this is first. Everyone loves 1/4 of An Unearthly Child. It is a beloved story, but the second they actually do the time travel that part 1 sets up, everybody in the fandom collectively loses interest. I don't understand this. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that I only saw this fairly recently, and it went down much better than it would if I was a kid with no attention span. If you go into An Unearthly Child expecting a Doctor Who story, the first Doctor Who story, you're not really going to get it, because it's not there yet. It's not cooked. That sounds like a criticism, but it's not. Part 1 is atmospheric and moody in all the ways everybody says it is. It's actually well shot, thick with mist and shadows. I think it's one of the greatest cliffhangers I've ever seen. You know what Part 1 is? It's foreshadowing. So much of it is setting up what you're gonna see in parts 2, 3, 4. Part 1 hints to savages and cavemen, telling us that it's a story about humanity in general and elitism. The First Doctor compares time travel to television, to the new invention of television. That's clever. You know how End of the World just goes straight to alienating? It just tries to hook the audience by being as weird and out there as it can be. That's what the cavemen do, for me at least. We can't have an adventure serial because the sheer premise is so terrifying and alienating that the first story has to be a survivalist exercise. And it's completely 100% character motivated. This is why Hartnell era is so grossly underestimated. To me, the story is very much about the First Doctor's high civilization snobbery. He talks down to Ian and Barbara, comparing them to savages, and then what do? We use time travel, go to its logical endpoint extreme. He has to absolutely ambiguously be a human in this one, right? For the whole thing to work. It shows us how this early Doctor sees us. In fact, the superiority complex becomes even funnier in the future going forward when we find out, his grand civilization that he comes from, they're not meant to do this shit. He cannot even pilot the TARDIS. That's the episode's final gag. Space, my boy, your little savage brain must be imploding. Also, I cannot pilot it and I'm scared. I've got a really simple, exaggerated parallel to our main characters and their dynamic at this time. Woo! Woo! That's that's what stories do. Something Doctor Who immediately forgets and never really returns to as we take a dive into adventuring. Ian's the one who has to take some kind of moral charge, relating back to his experience as a teacher. Barbara's actually quite relatable in the fact that she's screaming the whole way through the episode, because I would be also. But nonetheless, the four are hoisted back to the very beginning of human organisation and teamwork. And what do the four of them need to do to survive this whole ordeal? Those two things I just said. Cohesion. The gag alone that we've been doing this whole recognisable two-party political system since the beginning of time, that's funny. Zah for leader, yeah. I just agree with his policies. Remember, Carl is not stronger than the whole tribe. Yes, but not everyone can be leader. Where we come from, everyone can make fire. Hey guys, do you think that could be like a political allegory to this? No? Okay. Let's just watch the Daleks instead. Unearthly Child has a beginning, a middle, and an end, not just a beginning, and a beginning. I think an episode like this, being the show's priorities, separates it from being sci-fi pulp to forever family show. I'm happy things turned out the way they did, because I actually quite happen to like the TV show Doctor Who, Rue Britannia.
And so there we have it. Thank you to all of my guests. Sadly, obviously, William Hartnell is no longer here to see us praise his and everyone else's work. Though I believe it was Michael Caine who said something along the lines of, being available to pick up your own awards is a sign that your career is slipping. And I think that's true. I think my career, for instance, will do very well as soon as I'm dead. There are a couple more people who were meant to give awards tonight, but sadly they couldn't make it. Jack has sent in this picture of Twice Upon a Time, and next to it he wrote, "Hear me out, bro." And Kingdom has told me to track down and destroy every copy of Twice Upon a Time in the country. Okay, how do I find a middleman between this? You know, I really wasn't expecting there to be disagreements when I brought multiple Doctor Who fans together. Okay, for balance, I'm going to go into every HMV and destroy their copy of Twice Upon a Time, whilst also explaining to the people who work there why Twice Upon a Time is the greatest Doctor Who story of all time. Yeah, that should do it. Man, being a centrist is hard.